Okay.
Okay, call to order the meeting of the Caribou Planning Board, Wednesday, February 3, 2016. First item of business, approval of the January 6th, what, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Approval of the January 6th organizational meeting minutes.
Make a motion, we approve the January 6th organizational meeting minutes.
Second it.
Moved and seconded, we approve the organizational meeting minutes. Any discussion? All in favor? Passes. January 6, 2016 regular meeting minutes.
Make a motion that we accept the minutes.
I have one small change. Under adjournment, it says Philip McDonough the second. Should be the third.
Oh,
Just for housekeeping.
So sorry about that.
That's all right.
any other discussion?
Surprised Mr. Sear didn't catch that.
All in favor? Passes. Any new business to come before us? Okay, old business, Chapter 13 rewrite. So the blue writing is Jim's and the red writing is Austin's.
Correct.
I like your create new introductory paragraph that sets the tone of encouraging opportunities for growth. I know we had discussed that some, but that is what we need to do. Let's just take this one page at a time. Page 5, anybody have any suggested changes, or are we good with the changes that we decided on last meeting? And Jim has got them correct? Nothing for page 5? Page 6? Anything for page 6? No. Page 7? Moving right along. Page 8? We didn't have any changes on, oh, discussion ended. Okay. Okay, so we're looking at beginning at number 7 on page 8. I have something on number 7 and I'm trying to figure out what it is. I'm questioning why the last sentence, and I gotta read it again. I read this like a month ago. The CEO of Planning Board may not require the alternate arrangement to exceed a period of 5 years. And the arrangement is the issue of disposal of solid waste. So basically it's saying that if the applicant, if the city's solid waste facility is not in compliance, or accepting the solid waste would cause it to exceed its contract, the applicant shall make alternate arrangements for disposal of solid waste. The alternate arrangement shall be at a disposal facility which is in compliance with its license. The CEO of Planning Board may not require, I read that initially as it was limited to 5 years. Wait a minute.
It is, I think.
May not require the alternate arrangement. So my question is why? Why can't it exceed 5 years? I mean, if somebody builds something in town which for some reason the solid waste generated by it cannot go to the tri-community landfill, and they make arrangements to bring it to the Prescott landfill, who for discussion's sake are very happy to accept it, why can't that exceed a period of 5 years? Because if I were looking to build that factory and I was told that in 5 years' time, you can't dispose at an alternate arrangement, I might not build my factory here.
What does it, I think it means that at the, once the 5 years is out, like, it seems to almost put it on the town or on the city. If we don't have something to accommodate the growth, then we gotta build something bigger. And so, if you come to build your factory,
Well,
and
this is just pertaining to a campground, though.
oh,
I mean, we're still talking
Oh,
about,
are we still in the
Was that still
campground?
part of campgrounds? Because the way I was reading it is that
No.
it falls under separate.
The campground was section 6,
oh, really?
but
Yeah.
section 7 is independent
There's no snow day today.
of,
Sorry,
it's the next section.
I was right.
if you will.
I got your answer, Denise, thank
You
you.
did, okay,
Yeah, the way I was reading that is it's number 7.
Yeah,
One of the reasons we
13-7.
talked about reordering, restructuring
Yeah.
the documents so that things are kind of grouped together a little
Okay.
bit more
Yeah.
logically than they are
Okay.
now. So this is speaking specifically about solid waste. My understanding is that this is speaking specifically about the disposal of solid waste, and should an applicant come to us and require the disposal of solid waste and we can't accommodate it,
right.
we would allow for an alternate arrangement, but not an alternate arrangement that would exceed 5 years.
And I'm questioning, why are we putting a 5-year limit on it?
Maybe put the onus on the town to accommodate it.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. That's the way I would read it.
So I think the way it reads is, at the end of 5 years, all of a sudden you can use the city's facility and they can't insist on some alternate arrangement, whether it exceeds their capacity or not.
Yeah, but if it's a compliance issue,
Extra package?
oh yes, it is.
Thank you. Or maybe there's
Oh,
one.
there's probably one in there.
Oh, these are.
Your autograph is needed numerous times. If I want to build a factory here, and I'm going to put a lot of money into that factory, I'm going to want to know what's the future in 5 years from now for my solid waste, because if it goes with the the license from the DEP, that the solid waste facility, I know what you're saying, but it's not explicit in saying that.
Yeah.
And so I'm, any other comments, or
Maybe,
I'm questioning why is that limited to 5 years? Why can't there be an alternate arrangement for more than 5 years?
well, it sounds like if the factory owner wanted to use this alternate arrangement, they could continue doing that for an indefinite period of time. It's the CEO or planning board's ability to require it is only limited to,
Yeah, they might want to make another arrangement. Or they might want to, in other words, we can't say, you got to go 5 years, or you can't go longer than 5. I don't understand it.
It is confusing at first.
yeah. It would be good to know what the rationale underlying it in the first place was, before we monkey around with that.
Can we ask Jim to
Research that.
ask around the city why? It's too bad that Phil McDonough II isn't here. He may know some history on that. That'd be the first place I'd go, Jim,
Okay?
since he's got former tenure on this board.
Right.
The only thing that makes any sense to me is it's a way of requiring us to review the arrangement after 5 years and make sure it's still valid,
But
still viable.
putting myself in the shoes of a developer, it's making me question, do I want to develop here?
Why?
If my future is uncertain.
It's not, I don't think it says your future is uncertain. It says that we can't require the arrangement to exceed 5 years. That doesn't mean it can't do it. It just says that we can't require it.
Okay. So, I don't know if the
I'm not
issue-
sure why it's there at all, but that's the way I read it.
And requiring it might be necessary for the facility to keep its different
may not
licenses.
require the alternate arrangement to exceed. Okay. Well,
But Matt's the lawyer, so I defer to him.
well, the question, I mean, the sentence, I had to read it several times before, or just now. I mean, the first time I read it, I just jotted, why not? You know, Is there a feeling that we should just leave it as it is and move on?
No, I think there's a
I
feeling,
think it
let
needs to
Jim
be
figure out why
addressed.
it's there.
Okay.
What I'm hearing is that it needs clarity, and
Yeah,
my
it needs
understanding is
clarification,
that
it's not-
it seemed to indicate that the onus was on the city to solve a problem with its own landfill capacity.
That's another
If-
interesting.
if that's not-
Yeah.
If it wasn't suitable to satisfy the needs of the applicant, that's where it looked like it was going. But again, it's not worded clearly.
I
That's-
see,
that
I
was
see
one of
where
the
you're going with
perspectives
it, and
that I
that
took
makes more
from it.
sense, yeah.
So it would, if we have a problem with our landfill capacity and we have an applicant that needs to use an alternate method of disposal for its solid waste, we would allow them to do that or permit them to do that for up to 5 years. There seems to be this 5-year limit, and I don't understand that, the rationale behind it, but it may be that it was giving the city breathing time to do something in the way of modifications or another landfill in the city.
And if that's the intent, then it should say that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't clearly say that, but
We're
that's
just
kind of what I was
presuming.
trying to pull out of it.
We're just presuming, and
So-
that's dangerous to do.
But I can certainly, delve into the history, the rationale, and find a way to, I wrote needs clarity. So if we can determine that that's the intent, we can certainly word that intent better.
I had a question for number 9 of the electromagnetic interference.
Are we skipping 8?
Oh, did you have an issue on 8?
Yep.
Okay, go ahead, excuse me.
That's what I had emailed about. One of the things that I had looked at was our comprehensive plan, 2015, planning board. Consider amending local land use ordinances as applicable to incorporate low-impact development standards. And then that's what this is, the low-impact standards, development standards for the state. And I sent the link to that. And there are a few things in here that would be actually good to incorporate in our ordinances to check this off the list. If you go further on reading some of these things after our tasks, it gets into more,
You sent an email with the link.
yeah.
Did you send that in reply to when the minutes were sent?
No.
I replied all
Yeah.
to,
Yeah, you replied.
yeah,
You replied to
You
the
sent
minutes?
something.
Okay.
like
probably
that, go to
didn't
your
get it.
garbage.
I didn't, no, I never got the minutes.
Oh,
The planning board group list that was sent to me didn't include the chair.
That's
And that has been rectified,
That says something.
but
Austin said,
that was an oversight, I'm sure, on the part of our manager.
Austin
but,
said it was in
this-
there, so.
Eight
Yeah.
is about making sure a developer allows natural waterways to continue across his property. I'm not sure what else it has to do with.
Can you explain how that ties
yeah,
into number 8?
anytime I came across any of these while I was going through them, I looked to the comprehensive plan to see where our jobs are. And under water resources, which this is water resources, anything to do with water is water resources. And it was told to us to attempt to incorporate the low-impact development standards. The state has these ones out there, and when people, they have sample standards to meet in here, and then they have alternative standards. So when a development comes around and this tells them how to get rid of groundwater, drainage, all the rest of that stuff.
So you're basically suggesting that this paragraph be replaced with a bunch of paragraphs out of that?
I'm not sure.
No.
Reference
No.
thereof.
I'm not sure there's any conflict with the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan, when it talks about water resources, I believe it's talking about lakes and streams where you would have developable frontage. And this is not talking about that at all. This
But
is
that's
talking
because
about a
this
road.
is all out of order still. This is still ABC order, so every time we look at anything, if we take it in the context of the way it's put in this list, we're gonna be back at the camps with disposal of solid waste.
No, that's not my point, Michelle. The point is, this doesn't have to do with water resources. Water resources are developable resources, such as lakes, sides, or stream, navigable streams, or places where people would want to live. 8 deals with okay, we got a ditch coming through here because this is how the land drains. Let's make sure the developer doesn't impede that. I don't care whether it's A or B, that's all the intent, it seems to me, is of the paragraph.
If you look at the numbers, like, if you look at starting 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, probably those 5, those all touch on things that might potentially be nuisances if they're not controlled in some way or another.
Yeah.
Not so much probably, like you say, maximizing a resource.
Yeah, it's not a subdevelopment, it's not a,
So you tend to.
But
agree
this
with
also
Bob?
says that as will assure that no flooding occurs and all stormwater can be disposed of properly. Is that not handled during development and has nothing to do with the water
I
resources
don't believe it
tasks in
has to
here?
do with water resource.
I agree with Bob. Ditch water is not a resource. I mean, it's for drainage purposes, but
If I want to take a piece of farmland and develop it, it may be a swale right down the middle of it that drains the surrounding area when it rains hard. All 8 is saying is, you make sure that that water can continue in its course when you're done.
because if it can't,
Then it's got to go someplace
then
else. which is
somebody
bad.
down,
floods the neighbors.
then somebody downhill is gonna have a lot of water they didn't have before.
Yeah. Or uphill or on the side, yeah,
In addition to that, I believe it calls out the requirement for an easement to be granted
exactly.
that protects that in perpetuity,
I had
for
a
the
house.
duration of the development.
I had a house in a development in Massachusetts that was just that way. There was an easement across, right across the, not quite the middle of my property, but across one side of it, because that happened to be the headwaters of a major river.
For, the easement was for water drainage.
Yeah,
Who's the easement? The easement-
I'm granting the easement as the property owner.
Right.
I'm granting the easement to
I was gonna say,
the city, I guess.
who got the easement? The restrictions on you, I'm just wondering who it benefited. It benefited the town, I guess.
Yeah.
Probably
Must
was-
mean public easement.
Yeah.
It's a public, yeah.
It would be recorded on the deed for future, if
You
the
know, I can't.
property were transferred
I
in the
can't
future.
divert that stream, I can't build a dam on that stream.
It raises the question of maintenance. If there's going to be a maintenance requirement, does the city, by taking the easement, take on a responsibility for maintenance of that drainage way? That might be something we want to think
That
about.
winds up
But that's-
being
Yeah,
negotiated if there's a problem. doesn't it?
We're off on a rabbit trail
Yeah,
here.
we are.
Right.
Uh,
But just by way of explaining, I think the intent of paragraph 8.
And I agree with him.
Okay. There must be somewhere in here, though, that this is gonna make sense, right? Because we wouldn't have it in here.
Well, there must be some section, well, I don't know if it's gonna come to the, or what's the terminology? You know, you've got certain distances from water that you gotta stay.
Shoreline zoning.
Shoreline zoning.
Well, and number
That's correct.
16 is impact on water quality of the shoreline.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, I could see if there was a desire on the part of the board
Yeah,
to
15,
note
16.
references in some of these, so that there's a guidance to,
Yeah,
or a reference to the comp plan's desire to use statutes and examples provided by the state's low-impact development documentation. We could do something like that. I guess this, in my view, it's gonna come together a little more clearly when we can group these things
Right,
together
together, yeah.
properly, and then you won't have all of these references scattered around.
Scattered throughout, yeah.
They'll just be addressed in one section, which captures
so are there any
Water
other
quality, drainage.
questions on number 8? Okay, number 9, I was trying to think of an example that number 9 would apply to.
You're looking at one.
I'm looking at one.
Me. I'm a ham operator.
Oh,
I'm required not to interfere with my neighbors. Okay?
okay.
However, I question whether we need this paragraph, because in all cases, federal, state, and local requirements shall be met. I'm required by federal law to not interfere with my neighbors, period. And I don't know why we need another law locally that says the same thing.
Especially if all it says is violation shall be considered a nuisance. So
Right.
you give them
And
a
you're gonna become a
certificate,
nuisance
you're a
property, and
nuisance.
The FCC, it's a lot more than a nuisance, I can tell you.
So you would be in favor of deleting number 9?
I don't think it's needed.
Where were you reading that compliance with?
In all cases, federal, state,
Oh,
and
okay.
local requirements
Yep,
shall be
okay.
met.
I could imagine enforcing it and having to demonstrate that his radio is interfering with somebody else's. That's way beyond our,
The city hasn't got the
Our
resources to
ability.
do that, and it's not in their charter to do that. It's in the charter of the FCC to do that.
Yeah, especially radio and TV. My TV's not coming in clear and it's your fault.
Only if I'm transmitting.
Okay. So is there,
Prove it, right?
is there consensus to eliminate?
Well,
Todd, you have a question on your
Well,
face.
yeah, I'm just wondering, okay, with all, like, cell phone towers and stuff like this, I mean, is that,
Separate issue.
yeah,
I believe
I
it's
guess that's the
separate issue.
question,
I believe that's
I
separate.
mean, because I know, I don't know how many years back it was, but a cell phone tower on the backside of Hilltop was an issue for Caribou.
Yeah, I signed against it.
Right.
It's still, it's there though.
Yeah, but I mean,
Why was it an issue? Was it just for,
because people,
Not because of electromagnetic interference, but because of the stuff you can't see that's going to eventually kill
Oh,
you.
wait a minute, time out. Little education is needed here. Electromagnetic radiation, I hate to use that word radiation. Electromagnetic radiation, which is what all radio waves are, and which is what light is, and which is what X-rays are, etc. Okay? Until you get to gamma rays and X-rays, there's no harm going to be done, and that's been well proven. And there's a lot of people with an emotional kickback every time they hear the word cell tower, which is, believe me, I understand the subject thoroughly, it's foolish. If anybody has any objections to a cell tower, I can understand.
strike 9 then.
No, I can understand somebody saying, I don't want to look at that tower, it's visually objectionable. I can understand, I can relate to that argument. But when people start saying it's going to harm my health, I'm sorry.
I'm just telling you what I signed. You know, I still live in my house. I can
Yeah,
drive
you're
down
still
the road.
alive.
This raised for me transmission lines, electrical transmission towers.
That's another whole boogie.
And that is, yeah.
I bet you
That's
this
what
was
it didn't
in
bring to
because of
mind,
the
although
base.
cell towers is always, it's always something that's of a concern now. I read, and I don't believe we have any high-powered transmission lines in the city.
No, we don't have any super high voltage things where this
I didn't think so.
sometimes
The,
I
becomes an
haven't
issue.
seen all of it yet, but.
the snowmobile trails where some of them, they follow the power line? Are those high voltage?
They're high, but they're nowhere near extra high or super high. They're
Okay.
nowhere near the threshold of some people's emotional problems. I'm sorry, I'm very biased on this because I've spent the last 40 years thinking about it.
It's an issue that gets a lot of traction in the suburbs of Northern Virginia, but not, I wouldn't think it would be a concern here.
so we opting to strike
well, I
number
just
9?
don't want, I didn't want to strike anything if there is a future.
I would imagine we're gonna have an opportunity to regulate cell towers somewhere else in the code.
Okay, so let's strike
You know,
9.
the biggest problem today is not radio operators, because the radios you can buy today are very clean. And it's not transmission lines, and it's not cell phone towers. It's people with ballasts for their grow lights.
Well, we're going to discuss that too.
Let's come on. Those,
I don't want to discuss that.
those are the biggest issues in interference right now. Those damn grow light ballasts.
Ballasts emit
If they're not
waves.
properly designed. Yes, indeed.
Or if there's too many of them?
They can interfere with all kinds of stuff. They don't. No,
Now,
not
if I ever
those.
get interference in my house, I'm going around looking at all the neighbors' basement windows.
That's right, you do that. It won't interfere with
Well,
cables, so you'll never
so,
notice it.
is anybody opposed to striking 9? Okay, that was one voice.
I'm good with it.
I'm good.
Don't ask. That's like saying, who knows the answer to 9, and you say he does.
Okay, okay. Yeah, my page with the notes, my notes are different page numbers than the new packet. But anyway, moving on. Number 10. Any questions on 10? 11.
Wait,
I knew.
how'd you know?
It just has to do with
No, on
water.
number one, I mean, on A, it says, the procedures outlined in an erosion and sedimentation control plan shall follow best management policies. Whose best management policies? The state's,
There must be a
Yours?
document called that.
mine?
Well, best management is a moving target. It evolves.
I know, but we gotta elect a leader in this one. How are they gonna know what to look up? Are we following, do we want them to follow Maine's?
I bet if we looked at the way that the phrase is capitalized, I bet somebody was referring to a document that already exists.
Probably a DEP document.
Yeah.
I mean, somewhere along the
Would be
line,
important to
somebody
know.
gets all the guys and say, we should plastic in the hay bales.
Reference that.
We should incorporate something by reference.
There's an industry
I'm
BMP,
not
there's
seeing
gonna
that.
be
Yeah.
states have
Best
best management practices. I see
Oh,
as
wow.
practices, it's interesting they use the word policies, but best management practices is the art,
10A,
the term of
10A.
art, but.
Right.
Oh, first line. okay.
Yes, sir.
And there are industry standards out there that are produced by private sector developers, sure, the state, I'm sure the state has a BMP. I can certainly research that and come up
You
with,
can bet on
and
it.
use that as a citation if it's satisfactory.
'Cause, you know, that's what guides the erosion control
And it would be
in every
something that
construction project.
came out of or led to the LID, the low impact development, and that's a best management practice.
Right.
So that's an example of one. So the state has
Well, we should have a
probably
reference.
extensive reference material out there for us to refer to
Yeah.
and just cite as.
Yeah, if nothing else, even if the person coming here knows what the best management practices are, if we have the link in there and we have to look at something, we
Well,
can just click on the link or go to where it says.
Well, you know, the weird thing about it, so if you got an ordinance that incorporates like the different building codes by reference, for that to be enforceable, you gotta be maintaining a copy, like a hard copy of that at the clerk's office, so that somebody can come in and they don't have to go searching on the internet. So if we do end up doing that a bunch of times, these different best management practices, we would really have to nail down precisely what it is, but then also make sure we got the hard copy and keep them up to date and keep them available, or else it's completely not enforceable.
Can't we say, instead of being, you know, a link or something which is subject to change, you know, 5 years down the road or something, can't we just say something, best management practices per the state of Maine? Which is kind of a general reference?
I mean, it doesn't
We
matter
used
to
some
me.
similar language in the document we worked on last month where we said the most current
Right, but
regulations the state of Maine has in play or is in force. And that way we are, by definition, staying current with the standards. And if Maine decided to do something, well, we can't go anything less than what the state would require, so. If we wanted to do something beyond what the state requires, we would want to review it perhaps whenever it changes.
Yeah, you gotta have you gotta have a hard copy.
Certainly,
At the
yes.
clerk's
We
office.
probably have some, we have the current code, the code enforcement office upstairs has a lot of the current codes. Penny has done a great job of keeping those up to date. I don't think it would be hard to get copies from the state,
I was gonna say, but
or
within this
just
day
print
and
them
age
out
of
and put
being
them in a
able to print
binder.
stuff off, you know, print stuff from the internet, with us being able to have access to that link and immediately pull that off and print it off for
yeah,
somebody,
but
would
what
that be
happens,
compliant?
what happens if the link changes 3 years from now? Then your policies,
You don't want to put an internet link in. and
Yeah,
everything.
you
No,
don't
no,
want-
but I'm just saying, by referring to what the,
I had
you know, the section or subsection,
I had to look that up one time, and I just remember it saying you have to maintain all these different things, and probably most towns don't like strictly comply with that all the way around.
Well, if we don't have, like, on things that are like that, now I assume that on some of these things where we're trying to say Maine does this or Maine does that, does Maine have its own? Like, if someone comes in and says, I want to build something, are there erosion and sediment control
Yes, there are.
Maine
There
laws?
must be.
I would say yes. And
Right, and then there's the EPA and
Right.
all the rest of those, yeah.
And if you hang around the state legislature long enough,
Oh.
you find out that they say, hey, there's 6 other states that are doing this, we need to consider that. So what Maine has a lot of times is plagiarized from all over the country, you know? And so the best practice could be something that, yeah, Maine has got one, and it happens to be the same as 6 other states, or 16 other states, or, you know what I'm saying? I guess,
The process in subdivision review is that some civil engineer is going to be hired by the developer to come up with a plan. And part of his plan is going to include erosion control during construction, which is what 10 is all about.
Right.
And the city's job, through its code enforcement officer, is to look at that plan and decide if it meets criteria or it doesn't. And then it's the job of the planning board to settle the differences at a hearing. So
So-
whether we have something in here that refers to another thing which may change, blah, 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 it's irrelevant.
the engineer is
The
gonna,
engineer is gonna do his best job because his license depends on it. And our code enforcement officer, who, in the best case, is also an engineer, is gonna do his best job because his license depends on it. And between the two of them, they're both gonna make a case, and we're gonna, if there's a conflict, we're gonna have to decide who's right. That's our job.
it's,
Yeah, but where do we go? I
Right.
mean, if they come before us and say,
We use our judgment.
yeah, but
But based on what?
based on what?
Based
Because I
on
believe
the-
this
You can pull in any resource you want. You can
management
say,
practice. I don't-
I want to go look at the state standards. And somebody else might say, well, I want to go look at federal DEP standards. Fine, do it. But at the end of the day, you're going to make a judgment call. You're going to approve or disapprove the subdivision with conditions. And the conditions are going to be things that you write based on your best knowledge. You know, it's not something that we have to beat to death, try to figure out whose law are we referring to. I don't believe it matters.
when, I'm trying to remember if it was last fall, or could it be a year ago or whatever, we had a proposal brought to us for, they were doing some construction at the main Veterans Home. I think it was a new entrance, and there was drainage issues, and during the construction period, bales of hay were going to be lined up.
Yep.
And I remember that was specifically in the plan.
Sure.
That there would be bales of hay to control the water during, until such time as the vegetation had taken root, et cetera. So. I mean,
That's what this is all about. That's why it's here, to make sure that those contractors do that.
And that was put in the plans by whomever
Whoever
designed the plans.
Exactly. Now, some neighbor could come in and say, I don't like that because it's gonna put sedimentation down on my lawn. Well, that's why we have hearings. And that's when we either agree with the neighbor or we don't.
Jim, what's your experience tell you in a statement like this? Does it typically have a reference to a state or federal or DEP or?
Well, there's state standards and there's industry standards. There's places where an industry standard might be referenced because it's so universally accepted that the governing bodies haven't felt a need to mess with it, if you will. Thinking outdoor decks, for instance, there's an industry standard for building decks onto residential structures, and that's accepted in many places. So they don't have to write their own.
Right. These guys in state
So-
government, they'd rather not write anything if they can
So,
find an industry
best
standard.
management practices, do you think, is that good enough, or should it be more specific?
I
I
don't
would
think
like
it
to
should be,
find out
I
if-
don't think it should be capitalized.
That's the term of art, is BMP, and it's a capitalized,
Oh, okay.
that's just an acronym, BMPs, or it's a standard, and that's the way you describe whether you're gonna use 24-inch high sediment fence or 18-inch high sediment fence, and whether it's gonna have to be reinforced with a chain link fence, or, I mean, these are tools that are used in the field to accomplish the goal of preventing erosion and sediment from disturbing either the freshwater or the properties adjacent, or our stormwater systems. There are tools that you use to protect your stormwater drainage. Sewers, the entrances to sewers are covered with the fabric filled with riprap or gravel or whatever the statute might call for, or the best management practice might call for. And that can change by geography. You might have a different standard in New England than you would use in the mid-Atlantic or in southwestern United States. I would say that let me ask for the opportunity to see if the state does refer to a BMP for erosion and sediment control, and I can come back to you and provide you with either if you have a desire to cite the state, if there is such a thing that the state uses.
Well, I think
And if not, then if there's an industry standard that is used throughout New England.
I don't think it's a bad idea to cite, if we're gonna cite something, to keep it within the state, because that'll give us a point of reference too, if it comes to the point where we need to have a discussion or a hearing with regards to that, so we know exactly where, we're not spending a whole lot of time looking around. We have that
Yeah.
chapter and verse right there where we need to go.
I would be very, very surprised if a design engineer, a development design engineer, and the CEO for the city of Caribou were actually using different best management practice documents. Imagine they're both using the same one.
More than likely.
Yeah.
But it still gives us a fail-safe as far as, for us to educate ourselves if in case that comes to a head.
If you have an experienced developer in the community that's done work in the community or in other communities nearby in the state of Maine, they're probably already using the best management practices because they make sense and they're in compliance with whatever other code requirements might be in play. So, and you were right, that sort of the goal is to prevent damage to adjacent properties, our utility infrastructure, and the water quality. So,
And don't take the topsoil away.
right.
Well, so you'll do a little investigation and let us know?
Yes, sir.
Anything else on number 10? Number 11?
Well, I wondered if we couldn't do something a little easier with number 11. Some towns actually have pictures in their codes of what's good, what's bad. And we also have mention, again, in the comprehensive plan about open skies, dark skies concepts, and I don't remember which things ours in particular said.
The danger with pictures is every month there's a new batch of
New batch of fixtures.
fixtures on the market. I agree in the dark skies concept. The only thing that I had with this was the use of foot candles. I mean, I have a light meter app on my phone. It records in lux, L-U-X, and I had to find out how many foot candles equals a lux or whatever. I had to come up with and so I don't know if we want to add, because before I downloaded this light meter app, I looked at several of them, and they all issue their findings in lux, L-U-X. So it's a different way to measure. I suppose it's like standard versus metric, or
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's probably some kind of metric.
It's most likely metric. Foot candles is an old English unit, and it's not much in use.
so
That
that
might
was
have been when this was written, but it's not now.
I even converted it to lux and put it in parentheses for each item. I mean, we can leave the foot candles there, but I think if all the light meters of today are using lux,
Maybe provide a convert. We wouldn't want to go metric in one area and American everywhere else.
Well,
Or we-
well, you could in the case of something like this, because the people who are doing the measurements have already adopted the standard.
Sophisticated enough, yeah.
If not, we'll send Phil out for it.
If somebody still has a light meter that measures in foot candles, I can tell you it's very old.
Yeah, but sometimes these things too are pointing to your average human being, right? I mean, everything under this chapter is not development, is it? I mean, it's not all contractual development, correct?
no, this could be a
This is
neighbor.
general.
Well,
But if the neighbor's gonna measure, he's gonna measure it with his cell phone, and he's gonna measure lux, because that's what the cell phone does.
Or he's not gonna measure his light, because I never knew you could measure your light with your cell phone until just now.
I don't either, but if he's worried about it, he'll find out soon enough.
I won't be worried about it, it'll be the neighbor that's worried about it.
I mean the neighbor. The neighbor
Yeah.
will, if he wants to make an issue, he'll quickly find out how he's gonna measure it. So he can compare it against what he knows to be the standard.
They we
That's
actually,
it right there.
we actually had somebody come
That's
in
nice.
front of
Are
us
the numbers higher?
about their neighbor.
What is it registered? Oh, yeah.
Remember
okay,
that?
Yeah.
Was it on one?
And lights?
Uh,
Did you ask
their
them how
neighbor-
many foot
That's
candles?
200
No,
candles.
no, their neighbor
Not
had put up a
understanding the
light
meter
that
of
was
it
shining
all.
right in the bedroom or living room.
You know, wait a minute.
That was on Route 1, right?
No,
This is a different
no,
one.
It was up in the.
Hey, you know something?
I read, I don't know if I
This
was on
one's-
the board when that
I
happened, but I
bet you
remember.
this has got, I bet you it's got foot candles
candles.
and lux.
Yeah.
This one.
So how was
this
it
particular-
decided that
This
it was
particular
gonna
meter's
be?
got both.
Well,
You just told it
I
was.
think
that's
that's,
the app developer's
I
smart.
think that
Interactive
F,
light.
that's a foot candle.
Oh, no, that's an F-stop. That's the F-stop for a
I
camera.
think we actually said that we were gonna be discussing it.
Oh,
Oh,
Future.
well, hold on.
Mr.
That's not
McNeil's.
Oh, hold
that's
on.
exactly right.
Got the wrong light meter. Okay. Now
There you go, that's the light meter
Yeah,
for standard measuring
yeah.
light
So
intensity.
we've got 55 or 60 lux.
Yeah, coming right off that light right there.
You know, in the first paragraph, it talks about deleterious effects. And so you've got the potential of somebody complaining that my light is indirectly, which is kind of vague, producing a deleterious effect, which is kind of subjective potentially. It bothers me.
It's time 10.
Maybe we
Oh,
ought to define
okay.
deleterious, and maybe we ought to get rid of indirectly. Because if we're talking about light, it should be direct, if it's in fact the light causing the problem. I don't know how we do it indirectly, but there will be some way. Because, well,
If anything, I would say, when it says or from adjacent dwellings, I would also say or from overhead. Because you don't want to send any light up except that which bounces off the pavement.
Or freestanding, is that what you mean? Light off of a freestanding overhead pole?
Yeah, either from a pole or from a,
Or from-
for instance, somebody might put, architect want to put on the side of a building, a lighting fixture that puts light down, but for visual effect also puts it up.
Sure.
You don't want to do that.
For what reason?
The dark
Because,
skies thing.
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, when you're coming to Caribou from Presque Isle, as you pass where the picnic area used to be on the bypass, you can see the glow
Yeah.
over the hill before you see the town.
Especially if it's cloudy. Yeah.
That glow is light pollution.
Right.
Okay.
It's lights that are shining up that, I mean, that's why there was a kid at Job Corps who, when he came up here, was amazed that he could see stars. Because in the city he grew up in, he'd never seen the stars in his life.
That's it.
Because there was so much light pollution, you couldn't see,
Okay, I get you.
you know.
And even now, I can't see much because there's so much light all around.
We'll just turn off the street light for you.
Neighbors' light.
Okay, let's go back. Did you want to see some language change?
well, I think that deleterious, it's subjective, really. You know, my lights are bothering you, and that's either because there's a problem with my lights or a problem with you. There's no way to get to the bottom of that.
Yeah, there's no standard that's referenced here, so. that would
So
be
you
my
want to
opinion.
take that completely out?
Or if it was more precise, or maybe if you said if this, well, I don't know how we.
Well, if you
Deleterious effects could be defined as something that would impede on or.
An objectively
have-
reasonable person.
Well, I appreciate that.
It's a subjective
That'd be
measurement.
something a code
of
enforcement officer could apply
Yeah.
in the field, but if you've got a principle like dark skies, or if you have a statement about the avoidance of light pollution,
Yeah.
that lends itself more to how do you define
Deleterious.
deleterious
Because
effects?
the presentation
Deleterious
that we
effects.
got, right, was about, the guy thought he saw too much of the neighbor's lights coming through the spaces in his blinds.
Right.
Right, and it was
Is that what it
keeping
was?
keeping the whole family up all night, or something like that.
and that's where you get into this, the details below, which talk about shielded and hooded,
Yeah.
In maximum intensity.
yeah, which are things that can be judged just from going out and taking
Right.
an observation of the situation and measuring the light in lux or lumens or foot candles or whatever.
We could just say if it's shielded as it's required and doesn't exceed the maximum intensity, then, you know, part of having neighbors is having neighbors, and, you know, there's no effective way to complain about it.
But,
You could rewrite that first paragraph if you indulge me for a minute. Lighting may be used to serve security, safety, and operational needs shall be shielded. In other words, after needs and before the lighting fixtures in the next
well,
paragraph.
aren't you just saying it's got to abide by A through F?
Well, A through F kind of tell you details, how to measure it, blah, blah, blah. But you need an introductory paragraph that's going to lead into that.
Right. I
So-
mean, like, D, exterior lighting shall be shielded in such a manner as to not create a hazard or a nuisance to the adjoining properties
Right.
or the traveling public.
Okay, I'll change what it's going to say. Lighting which blah, 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 and operational needs may be installed subject to the following conditions.
Yeah, something like that. Actually, the last sentence of the introductory paragraph basically is repeating D, you know, that shall be shielded or hooded so that lighting elements are not exposed by motorists, pedestrians, or adjacent dwellings. Well, that's the same thing that D repeats.
That happens a lot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we added a bunch of LED lighting around the nursing home, and one of our neighbors down the street came up and said, hey, have you noticed how that new light is hitting you in the eye at night when you're coming up Rose Street? And we said, no, we hadn't. Well, let's check that out. And sure enough, it was blinding. So we changed the fixture and relocated it, and, you know, with the LED lights now,
They
it's amazing what you can light up.
produce an intense light.
And so, now Michelle, what would you, at the very beginning, you had an issue on this item.
No, I just said, I was talking about dark skies policy.
Oh,
that
okay.
Open skies, dark skies.
Well, and I think that,
Says we started researching it
yeah.
and light pollution and its applicability to the city of Caribou.
Now,
What if we just pared it down to only those standards that are objective?
Yeah.
which ones do you consider,
A through F, looks like.
so in other words, take out the introductory paragraph?
Put in a sentence like.
Introductory sentence.
Like
Yeah.
Bob said,
Okay.
your lighting's gonna conform to this.
Ties the conformance to those
Yeah.
lettered standards.
And do we want to put the lux
I would.
levels in there? Do we want to put them instead of foot candles or in addition to foot candles?
I would change it to lux because
Get the
that's
foot
current
candles
Because if
right
flux
out.
is the most common way that stuff's being measured now, I mean, it would only make sense to update it.
Okay, except, yeah, well, something I hadn't realized that Bob just pointed out is my light meter in lux is actually, the numbers I'm reading, 32 or 16, should be times 10.
Times 10.
So, like,
Did you find out what a lux was in relation to a foot candle?
well, what I've got for a foot candle is 10.76 lux.
Okay.
10.76. So if you take that, so, you know, your 1.5 foot candles, I had rounded to 16 lux. 3 foot candles, 32.3. I mean, I don't know how far in the decimal point you want to go. You know, but, so we can change the foot candles to lux. And so, as far as an introductory sentence,
But I wonder, when you're buying this stuff though, is the information on the packaging gonna be foot candles or lux?
Probably not.
Might be
we're
lumens.
probably referring to fixtures that are,
Yeah.
available for commercial developers.
Yeah,
You know,
These things, will have those things.
both
well, but
pieces.
Phil
Probably
just,
not foot candles.
But that's for commercial, I mean, we're gonna be dealing with residential as well, so.
You're gonna get
we should put-
lumens.
We
You're
should
gonna
put
get lumens.
lumens slash
Oh, yeah.
lumens, depending on,
Right.
and so, I don't know what the conversion is for lux to lumens, but
No clue.
Google,
We could certainly find it.
Certainly
It's out
Google,
there.
Google can tell you.
There would be a chart we could create that would list all of them,
I spent my life in watts.
if we wanted to do that.
Yes, you could, just 1 foot candle equals so many lux equals so many lumens.
yeah.
Right.
Put it in there and let them worry about it, they've all got calculators.
Yeah,
And then we stick with these standards. Are these standards acceptable? 1.5 foot candles throughout for parking
Well,
areas.
I don't think we have
0.6 foot
anything that
candles
says they're
for
not.
abutted residential. I mean,
that's,
I don't know what, yeah.
I'm not sure, unless we went out in the parking lot and tested it and, because I presume somebody did that sometime, or these numbers were
standards.
best practices somewheres in the
right.
past.
Right.
I haven't walked around my property with my light meter to see how much the neighbor's lights are shining on me.
You do that later tonight.
And that'll vary depending on the season.
I was gonna say, I'm
depending
gonna get a lot
depending on
brighter
foliage.
reading in the snow
Type of
than I
trees you
will
have.
in the fall.
So, and will change over time with the growth of vegetation and shrubbery and trees, so.
Yeah. Okay, so as far as an introductory sentence,
If I may, lighting may be used to serve security, safety, and operational needs, may be installed subject to the following,
Yeah, I would,
sounds good?
and then you have this list,
Yep,
and then we'll verify that this list is, that the numbers in this list, we'll find out what the source of those numbers are,
or
if there's a way that we can do that.
reasonable, yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't.
Otherwise, we schedule a field trip for going out, measuring light.
You could put it on some community member to put on a case that the numbers are unreasonable. Keep them until somebody comes in with that.
sometimes you're gonna have to wait until somebody objects, because you won't know.
Is that it for number 11? Number 12, fire protection.
I would pass, if we think any of this needs to be changed, I would pass it by the fire chief. He's the only one with knowledge, detailed knowledge of the standards.
I had written myself a note pertaining to number D, where I wrote, how about deep well with question mark, gallons per minute capacity? A proposed subdivision shall provide for a minimum storage of the capacity of 10,000 gallons. Well, you're gonna have to dig a well for this, this is for
No,
water.
it's a cistern. In most cases, in most developments, when they do this, it's a cistern. It's full of water. Because the fire department's gonna pump it out at 100 to 300 gallons a minute.
Right, 10,000 gallons isn't a whole lot of
That's
water when
not
you're
a
throwing it
whole
on a building.
That's 1 tanker truck, or 2 tanker trucks.
Okay. So that's like the big hole.
It's a great big concrete hole in the ground.
In the entrance to the Rustic Center Mall
Yeah.
on the left.
Or, well, no, that's not there for water.
That's for drainage?
That's for drainage
Stormwater.
retention.
Stormwater
Stormwater
management
retention.
pond,
Yeah.
And usually it doesn't have any water in it. And a lot of guys won't do this with a cistern. Up here, no doubt they would gouge out a pond. And that's why they got the proviso about 3 feet of ice.
Freeze thaw in a cistern in this part of the country would be pretty rough, I would think.
Yeah, a lot of rock, a lot of ledge.
Ponds would be more efficient, economical.
Or if the guy's lucky enough to have a great big pond on his property, he says, okay, I'm gonna put a standpipe in it, and there you are.
You said in it, not on it?
And, well, the standpipe is installed actually on the ground, in the ground, next to the edge of the pond, and it extends down into the pond.
Oh. Okay.
Just for clarification though on A, what does that even in reference to? What
Fire
is
hydrants?
A?
The fire
in
hydrants
reference
thing?
to? Yeah. Is a commercial building responsible for putting in their own hydrants?
I would reword that, because the way I read that means that the city is responsible for providing a public if a city public water supply exists in the area that the building is being built, then it's up to us to put the fire hydrant within 500 feet. I would reverse that. I would require any building to be built within 500 feet of an existing fire hydrant on the public water
You
supply.
might want to reword it so that developer is required to cover the cost of the installation of the
Or
fire hydrant.
install, right.
I think that's what it really means.
Is that
Might not
okay?
be worded that way.
Sure.
But I think what it's really saying is, you know, if you're looking out to have a water meter going down, a water main going down your road, you're gonna be responsible for putting hydrants in, basically every 500 feet,
That is probably the intent,
or every 1,000 feet.
Every 1,000.
right?
Yeah, every 1,000 feet is
1,000
right.
feet. Yep. If they don't already exist.
Yeah.
Wouldn't there be already some guidelines in that whenever the municipal water system is expanded, that they automatically put in fire hydrants every so many feet? I can't imagine a community expanding their water system without automatically putting hydrants.
It's in the interest of the community to do that. It
Yes,
may
I
be
know.
that we could receive that as a proffer from a developer if they have a proper system here.
Because
But
B and C refer to what I call standpipes, these guys call them dry hydrants, same thing.
because to me, a standpipe is the red and white water tank at the airport.
Oh,
That's a standpipe.
That's, okay, you say frap, I say milkshake.
Okay.
Because you can give-
Well, so what are we doing with A? Are we,
I wouldn't do anything with it.
leave it as it is? Shall be located no further than 500 feet from any building. In other words, if I want to put in a development and I'm more than 500 feet from the hydrant, then I'm going to probably have to add a hydrant closer.
Correct.
Right.
I'm going to have to bear the cost of that added hydrant.
Give you an example for C. Go out to Washburn Road, well, you live out there, you know, right where the old Washburn Road is,
Yeah, I know where that is.
right at that intersection. There's a dry hydrant down in the Caribou Stream. It's not on the right of way, but
Is it?
somebody gave the fire department an easement to back in there.
You said at the old where the old Washburn Road connects to York Street?
No, we're at the other end, we're
You mean
connects to
Mitchell Road?
Washburn Street,
Mitchell Road?
Washburn Road. Maybe it's the Mitchell Road.
It's the Mitchell Road.
Mitchell
Sorry,
Road.
sorry about
Mitchell
that.
Road, yeah.
Mitchell Road.
Okay. There's a hydrant there that's connected
It's
to
a dry
the...
hydrant that's connected, it's tied into the Caribou Stream,
Okay.
as an example. If you want to go see how they're installed, that's a good place to look, in the summertime.
Another field.
Okay, we done with 12? I don't know if this is, well, I learned in school there's no dumb question, but under home occupations, that first sentence that's by itself, home occupation shall be allowed in any zone. I inserted the word residential zone. I mean, home occupation, wouldn't that naturally be in a residential zone? Or can you have,
You have residences in commercial zones.
on the second floor? Okay,
Oh, you even have them on the first floor, because they were there before it was zoned commercial.
okay, retract my question.
But would we want to regulate them all the same way?
Right.
If you got a home, maybe in the middle of nowhere, or in a commercial zone? You know what I mean?
Okay, but it's saying that home occupation shall be allowed in any zone.
Right.
Right, but then do we want to
then
regulate
it
them
goes
all the
on.
same way?
I think it.
Well,
that's
what
the
is
intention.
suggesting that we're not?
Well, we might not want to. You know, like if you have a home that's in an industrial or commercial zone, maybe you can store materials outside, whereas somebody over on Coolidge Avenue probably ought to not.
So then, we must have a section on home occupations? I would think we described that in...
It's
in
here. This is the section on home occupation. And it says there shall be no exterior.
So there's no differentiating between Okay.
Right now, there isn't.
Well, all we need is a statement that says exceptions to the above can be made with planning board approval, dependent upon specific circumstances.
If you want to get into that kind of a,
I mean, is that, or is that too, are we giving ourselves too much power?
Or what if you said home occupations are allowed in any zone? If you said they're allowed in any zone, and those within the, say, the residential zone are subject to everything below that sentence.
you could put in a thing that's that says certain exceptions may be granted for residences that are in commercial or industrial zones.
Yeah, maybe that's how you do it.
Maybe, not can be, but may be granted.
That sentence just ends with "and."
Oh,
And?
what it does, it's badly constructed for readability, but what that means is everything that follows applies. You at least put a colon.
Yeah, because you see, you got the
And then
number,
the next one ends.
you got 13, and before you start sub-paragraphing in numbers again, they probably intended for there to be letters, lettered paragraphs separating all these out
Yeah.
with colons and whatnot.
So what was the terminology you were suggesting where?
I'm not going to dictate wording, I'm simply suggesting that, because that's Jim's job, I was simply suggesting that we could put in a provision that said in industrial and commercial zones, certain exceptions to the above may be granted.
By the planning board? Or
Code
by
enforcement.
who? By CEO?
It's, well, the permit
I'd
to
like
it
to
all
have
is from the
some oversight.
CEO,
Pardon?
right? The original, so because there's one point where they talk about a site design review application, but then the other point, they talk about a code enforcement officer issuing a permit.
Right.
Didn't we make this all by code enforcement officer?
Yeah.
We did that with daycares, I thought. Not all, or did we do it with all of them? I don't recall.
It wouldn't have been this year, or it wouldn't have been during the last couple of months. I thought at some point we talked about making that a code enforcement officer deal.
I remember that conversation. I don't remember if it was specific to daycares or to, actually, the more I think of it, it was to all of the above.
We were
Yeah,
talking
we
about
were,
hairdressing.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it was.
yeah, we
Yeah,
got
it
rid of
was.
the site
Yeah,
design.
we were
review by
empowering
the
the
planning
code
board.
enforcement officer with, and if people are unhappy with the code enforcement officer, well, then they can always ask to come here.
Or, well, actually, to go to the ZBA. I think, because we're not an appeals board.
So where would they go if they don't have a
Say-
If they don't
satisfactory?
like the CEO,
Right,
I think they go to the zoning board of appeals.
Board of Appeals.
Yeah.
Which, refresh my memory here, zoning board of appeals is not Caribou specific. Is it a regional thing?
Well, we've talked about how it should be made up, and
Yeah.
we haven't resolved that yet.
Because I thought, a typical zoning board of appeal is made up of a group of regional code enforcement officers.
I think we have one,
If they
and they
do
don't
that-
have to be community members, and they're mostly professionals, aren't they?
Yeah, that's how, I was very surprised to learn that's how it's done up here, because where I used to live, zoning board of appeals was an elected board.
Elected.
Yeah, just like the planning board was. But it was local, it was people from the town.
Okay. Well, so, well, we're off
We're
subject.
way off topic.
Yeah, but the bottom line is, we're looking at putting a statement somewhere near the bottom that says that exceptions to the above can be made and,
May be made, don't say can.
or may be made in industrial or commercial zones.
Yeah, well, we have to swap out the reference to site design review if we change that.
Yeah,
To be consistent with the code enforcement officer permit language below. And then if there's exceptions to be granted, probably ought to give that authority to the code enforcement officer as well.
Yes,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, we gotta strike the sentence about site design review. there might still be an initial fee for the CEO, but it won't be, it's not a site design review.
You got that, Jim?
As of January 1, 2013, home occupation site design review applications, that's what you're striking?
Yeah,
Did you want
well,
to strike the fee as well?
no, I don't want to strike the fee.
We should
Okay.
eliminate the site design review, so home occupation application shall have an initial fee of $90.
Yeah, just strike the 3-word site design review.
Got it. And the exception language you wanted to add was a provision that exceptions may be made in commercial or industrial zones
Yeah,
as determined by the code enforcement officer.
I think so.
Okay. You mentioned that there is a zoning board of appeals discussion that you've had in the past that you need to have again?
I think
or-
we just talked about the fact that they rarely convene,
Okay,
that they exist, and most of us were new at the time and were surprised that they weren't community members.
Yeah.
I don't think we're working on that
We're
anymore.
not, it's not an act, it's not an act.
Well, and
That discussion left when Tony left.
yeah,
We may want to revisit it at some point.
well, and
I'll do a little research and determine what the appeal is for a code enforcement officer's decision. If
Has
it's
to be
challenged,
appealable
it has to be
someplace.
appealable to someone. If it's not appealable to this body, then we need to find out who it is
Do we
appealable
want to
to.
make it appealable to this body?
Do we want to become an appeals board? We're a planning board.
Right.
yeah, I think first let's find out.
Find out.
Let's find out what exists for a
Right.
zoning board of appeals.
Okay.
You know, my recollection is that it was like a county thing.
Maybe
And
that,
it was all of the
I think it
professional
wa- I
code
think it
enforcement
was.
officers.
they may have structured it that way up in a rural area just because they wouldn't have people at the local level to take it
Well, I was
up.
gonna say each town didn't have enough experts,
Right.
so you borrow from all the towns.
Sure. All right.
Okay,
Different way to,
are we done with 13?
I think so.
Number 14, hotels, motels,
Michelle's favorite.
and inns.
Sorry, Michelle.
Does anybody
No, it's all
have
right.
any? Oh, I've got some stuff.
Do we still plan on grouping transient accommodations when we get to them?
And with
Yes,
those?
yes, yeah, because on item C, where they talk about a 12 by 15, let's see, each sleeping room shall be not less than 12 by 15 feet horizontal dimensions, exclusive of bath. Okay, 12 by 15 is 180 square feet. The bed and breakfast discussion previously identified 10 by 12 as the minimum, which would be 120 square feet. And so I'm thinking, okay, and obviously a bed and breakfast usually has the bathroom down the hall, not in the room. So.
Not if you want to sell any rooms.
Well, but the bottom line is, as this is written, hotel rooms in Caribou are to be larger than bed and breakfast rooms. Now, bed and breakfast and
B&B.
B&B. And maybe that's because B&B are typically old houses, and the walls were already there,
Right.
and the bedrooms 100 years ago were not as big because people were smaller.
Well, it is to the extent,
What do you say?
it is,
Don't make fat jokes.
No, I'm talking height.
What do you say?
it is to the extent that most B&Bs are made out of existing residences, that's true.
I did have the opportunity to visit the main website with regards to the bed and breakfast question and the lodging and transient, and the Bath has a citation code enforcement that I'm happy to share. It offers a little bit of guidance, but the State Department of Human Services, Bureau of Health, has very specific rules relating to lodging establishments that include everything that we discussed last month except cabins. They use the term cottage. I don't know if we could equate the cabins to cottages and then thereby fall under this.
In southern
That's because
Maine,
in its
the other
entirety.
Maine. That's the other Maine.
Right.
It's cottage.
in southern Maine, it's near the water, it's a cottage. Up
Okay.
here in the woods, it's a cabin.
Cabin. Not
So
exposed
there's
to
either
camp,
one or
so
not.
everything's a camp.
So
But-
if we do go along with just leaving it as mains, do we need any of this stuff we have in here then? Or do we just put their letters, like C1, C2, or wherever these facilities can go on that chart of land use?
Right. I suggest this is fairly comprehensive when it comes to lodging, rules relating to lodging establishments. Now, it is from the health perspective, it's not necessarily from the development perspective. So we may need to cite more than just this document. But this is the document that I found, that baths, lavatories, and toilets shall be provided and conveniently located for each room or unit. And that was part of the discussion last
Right.
month about the language we have existing that just simply says rental rooms will have a separate bathroom from the
Right.
owner's bathroom. Didn't give any numbers or guidance
Does that
beyond that.
specify the room size?
No.
It doesn't. So,
Not that I didn't look for room size in here, it may be in here.
so it's
I
a
didn't
health
see
and
it.
hygiene thing.
It's
Yeah.
mostly about bathrooms and keeping them clean and having them stocked with toilet paper.
Right, but
And
outside of that,
sanitation,
the only thing we should do
tableware.
is what our community looks like. Like, if we want a buffer here and a parking lot done this way, then those are the only things we really should be adding to these. We have no business telling people what size rooms they make in a hotel.
Well, the hotel would have the incentive to make it
Right.
somewhere you want to stay.
Yeah, the marketplace will tell them what size rooms. they
Right.
have.
I like that. I like that. So, because that gives the developer, total discretion. And if he builds his rooms too small and he can't fill them, well, then he learned a lesson.
That's right, but his lighting better be good, and he better have a good buffer zone, and his parking lot better be well maintained,
Yes, ma'am.
and he better pay his taxes.
His parking lot, right?
Well,
With all that stuff,
hers.
So do we want to take,
would all that stuff come up elsewhere? Like where you can build a hotel or not?
That we didn't talk about, with the locating of
Because if the
motels or lodging
safety, if the
facilities.
safety parts are duplicative to what the state has.
Yes.
We don't need those.
Right.
And then if issues about, buffering and your parking lot and your stormwater and
These are the
everything is.
things
Right.
that we use for what goes where.
Oh, yeah, okay. So that's already covered.
I don't
Where
know
you
if
can, where you can build a
hotels-
hotel.
Yep,
In what zones they're permissible.
Yeah.
Right.
yep,
So maybe none of it's necessary.
right.
well, wait a minute. You're
Well,
saying-
there's gotta be in there, something has to be in there
I
by
was gonna say,
reference.
you just can't use the zoning table.
Not every
You gotta-
community has a hotel, motel, inn, and all the whatnots that we do for their ordinances.
But don't they at least have a reference to a state standard?
They just have
Well,
where you
so-
can build.
so-
You must need a license to operate a hotel. And so when you're
Yeah,
going through
you
getting
have to
that
go through
license,
state.
you're gonna have an interaction with DHHS, and they're gonna size up the health and safety stuff.
So, the question, Michelle, if other communities don't have this, are they remiss, or are we overly restricted?
I think we're overly restrictive considering the long line coming in here. I mean, we have 2 hotels, motels or whatever. We have a couple, 1 or more bed and breakfasts in Caribou. We don't really have the traffic or the population right now. And even if other hotels come in these days, you're not gonna build a shack, call it a hotel, and expect people to go stay at it. There are industry standards for hotels and motels and a lot of chains, so if one was to come here now, it probably wouldn't be under Bob and Diane, it would probably be under Sheridan, whatever the hotel name is now.
Hotel 6.
Motel, no, we don't want hotels.
We'll leave the way.
Hilton Garden would be what Hampton Inn is already in Presque Isle, and one of their associated chains would be Hilton Garden Inn, so that'd be nice to have one of
Well,
those. in
under
Caribou.
Presque Isle, it's hotels, motels, and section.
I don't think they do.
Well,
I
but
didn't
then-
find too
but-
many of them online.
But then, they're on the table. They're in the table as to what zones you can build
Yeah.
in. I mean, I think we gotta have at least a reference to complying with state DHHS standards.
And what I gathered from our discussion last month was that we were going to attempt to regroup all of the transient lodging into one section, and then we
Right.
could review that again
Right.
at a future meeting and make sure that the language is is strong enough for y'all.
Well, it
But
sounds,
We talked last month about using the state standards and regulations so that we wouldn't have to write our own.
so we're gonna be striking out the 12 by 15 minimum dimensions, I presume?
Well, we're gonna be striking.
Or
the whole
striking out
bunch.
the whole thing? Or,
Well, I think we should
not all.
lump it all together and then do it as a whole.
Let's take all the sections that have to do with transient housing, put them in one place, and then decide what we don't need.
Okay, okay.
I
That
agree.
works.
Let's do that.
Okay.
It's just like making snow and piling it up and letting it melt.
Number 15, I predict will probably be our last one. Go ahead, Michelle.
Okay. What'd you do, look over the comprehensive plan last week?
No, we had a preview a while ago of what was coming.
Yeah. For that,
Next episode.
of the comprehensive plan, says that we're supposed to, in 2015, along with the code enforcement officer, consult with the Soil and Water Conservation District staff when developing land use regulations pertaining to agricultural management practices. I have no idea what that even means.
Well, wait a minute. We're not gonna develop agricultural practices.
Comprehensive plan says we're gonna.
Well, that wasn't well, because you can go back to best practices. We are not farmers. They know the best practices far better than we do.
I'm just telling you what's here. I didn't sign this. I helped create this, but I did not sign it.
Maybe when it says consult with the Soil and Water Conservation District, they really mean defer to the Soil and Water Conservation District whenever we make these rules.
In this document?
Well, it would seem more practical
Yeah.
to mean defer rather than consult.
Page 36 is what I'm on right now.
36?
Yeah.
Awful lot of pages of stuff here that they're covered someplace else.
Where was the other one?
The comprehensive plan would be supported by the zoning ordinances, so there would be
That's
a
the
lot of
point.
replicable language, a lot of duplicate references from one to the other, but they serve different purposes.
I remember
The
seeing all this.
date's wrong, it should be 2013.
Okay, we're also supposed to designate critical natural resources as critical resource areas in the future land use plan.
Would you like to be the chairman of that subcommittee?
No, actually, because even in here on page 31, the last time biologists let us know whether or not we had deer wintering areas was in 2003. Now, I considered calling them and asking them if they have any more recent information, but I wasn't sure if that was outside the scope of my planning board position.
Well, you're a private citizen,
You're a
you're
private
welcome to
citizen.
call them anytime.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because I haven't heard of deer outside my house, at least one giant moose, and
Where do you
What's his
live?
name?
over by, on Fontaine, over by the cemetery. But right out back is about 1 square mile of trails and forests and every wildlife.
South, you're talking the cemetery on South Main Street?
Yeah,
Evergreen, yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
they come right in my yard. So I don't know if they winter there, but it's winter and they're there. But I don't,
We have deer feed.
I won't be.
Well, there's a crowd, up Washburn Street, not far from me as well.
Yeah,
And there's a deer crossing sign on the side of the road.
They don't read.
Because they don't, well, we've got, Sunday night, the police was escorting a herd of about 10 down the road.
Negative. It was one, and it was a horse.
Are you serious?
Yes.
I had a hard time to see it. I mean, there was a herd of 10 that went by at 7:15 in the morning. I thought I was done coming back.
No, they didn't call us ahead, no.
There was a horse?
It was a horse.
So you had a horse loose on Washburn Street. Okay.
Yep. Almost made it to the line. Almost.
You were hoping you would go to Woodland?
okay, and on this same thing, back to this for a second, also it says that we need to rezone the riverfront area. Now, that was a big thing during the
Oh, in the comprehensive plan? Yeah.
comprehensive plan, yeah, during the
Yes.
activities that took
Yes,
place prior to that.
You're talking about down by the old railroad station where Terrio Equipment has well, I don't know what they got in that building now.
No, that's lawn care.
Yeah, lawn care equipment. Yeah, because Austin and Tony Mizuko thought that was an area of town that had a lot of development potential.
That was all being driven by Kathy.
The people at that meeting, 2 of them are here, were all into that as well. We believe that eventually, at some point in time, the riverfront needs to be redeveloped into something more tourist attractive and not
Oh.
one steel.
And I'm in favor of that.
Oh, you mean those visioning meetings that we
Yes.
had?
Yeah.
I was there, and I kept very quiet about that because I think personally, it's a pipe dream. But that's just my own personal opinion.
We want to stack this board with optimists.
Yes, we do. We want optimism.
Stack it with optimism.
At the very least, we want to follow through with our 10-year plan.
I kept quiet on that one.
Anybody who's ever
No
been
one's got the money to
to
develop that river.
San Antonio.
I lived there, yep.
Oh, so you're familiar with Riverwalk?
Oh, I know Riverwalk
Come a long way.
well.
I mean, Riverwalk in San Antonio, that,
And what's the population of San Antonio?
A
a
lot.
little more than Caribou. And they probably did it before the EPA or the DEP was invented. But, I mean, it's
But it's a
beautiful.
good example of controlling the waterway to make sure it doesn't go over its bank.
Yeah, but, I mean, Riverwalk is basically, it's a river that is, got cement sides, and each side is just lined with restaurants and tourist shops, and there's an occasional arched bridge, and you got guys going down the river poling you, and
They don't have ice.
and they control the water level with dams upstream. So the water level is always the same going through this section of town.
Yep.
It's very attractive.
It's lovely, but again, is it germane to Caribou?
Well, you don't think we could turn Caribou Stream into a river walk?
Well, we
It's
wouldn't
like a
want,
bit of ice.
I don't think that the image was
Not on my
actually a
tax money.
river walk. In fact, I'm quite certain it wasn't a river walk idea, but, you know, at some point in time, if it doesn't, it's obviously not gonna be loaded with little shops in the 10-year plan. But if the aim is to stop having it be industrial,
Right.
and that also protects our water resources as well as the potential.
Well, that's all well and good, but
Tourists.
you won't get too far until you can figure out how to relocate and pay for the relocation of what is still an active rail yard.
I was about to bring in.
Or make that part of the future purchase by someone who wants to do
Well, one of the,
residential ones.
there's been several attempts to, bring industry to Loring, and I believe that particular rail yard is the connection to Loring.
That's right.
And so, if you eliminated that rail yard, well, now Loring, Loring has no rail access. And a lot of the developers that they've toyed with bringing there are gonna be dependent on rail.
As soon as I can get visas.
Okay, well, are you saying that changing the riverfront zoning to mixed use and residential is going to make it impossible for the railroad to still be used there?
No, not necessarily,
Not
but
necessarily.
what I'm saying is I don't think you're gonna be able to get rid of the rail yard. I think you can, well, and what's coming down there right now? Is it Dead River that's bringing in oil tankers?
Mostly it's propane and oil,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so,
Then one steel hauling
And,
stuff out.
yeah, the steel going back out, the scrap.
there's,
All right, so fine, so you can put a gated crossing to let people access the river, when the trains aren't coming. In practical things, plant a bunch of nice trees down there, clean up the shoreline, and then figure out how many people want to go down to the riverbank behind the rail yard. I wouldn't, but maybe just how an old commercial.
well, that's where we have a nice buffer between the industrial zone and the commercial zone,
Well, that part's not on us anyway. It's not on us to develop it. It's on us to rezone it. That's what's on us, according to this this plan.
So zone it in a way that would permit the
Right.
development. if
So
somebody
permit
wants
it
throw
to
some
turn
money
that
into
way
it.
if it decides to go that way.
All right.
I think Tony was pushing that pretty hard too.
He was.
Since Tony's gone, that hasn't been mentioned at all, so.
Well, I think,
It came up by quite a few of the people that are down at the visioning
Yeah.
meetings.
No, I
And not,
remember.
you know, everybody would like it to be that way tomorrow.
Yeah.
But that's
No, I
not-
think it's
yeah.
definitely, it should be something that we look forward to. I just,
Yeah,
like I said, Tony was very passionate about it. So,
But let me ask what that has to do with the bylaw about shoreline development.
you talking number 15?
you mean about this is natural resources, and one of the things that's inside of this chapter of the comprehensive plan.
Right, it was a public
The other
access to the
thing
shoreline.
was that we need to designate critical resource areas.
Define critical.
I-
What do they mean by
Depends on.
critical
Yeah, sure.
resource
I don't
areas?
know.
I mean, when I think of critical resource areas, I think of like, okay, where does the town get its drinking water? Which is a critical resource. You know, or is there another use for critical resource?
critical resource
This is-
is that river, because that's where the town does get their water.
Well, they got wells now,
Yeah, in that river.
yeah, or
Yeah.
beside river, yeah.
In the gravel.
So,
I don't think we should be conflating too much the land use ordinance, which is what 13 is.
I thought we were on 15.
No, chapter 13.
Oh,
Chapter 13
yeah,
rewrite
okay, yep.
with the 10-year plan. The
Well-
10-year plan talks about developing zoning, but developing zoning doesn't have a whole lot to do with a bylaw that says what you will do with the land, how you'll maintain it, how you'll protect it, and so forth. I don't know why we keep getting sidetracked off into talking about what we might do with zoning at the riverfront, or any other place for that matter, because of
Because of
something
the
we said in the 10-year.
comprehensive plan, and these two things need to be married, these two
Right,
documents.
But the land use ordinance itself is, all right, you've got the land, where this activity is permitted, here's what you have to do to be within the law. This doesn't tell us where we should have riverfront zoning, or where we should have residential zoning. It only says, here's what you do when you have it. The two issues, where we put the zoning and how we deal with it, are separate, in my mind.
The weird thing too about the comprehensive plan, it always talks about promoting all these different interests that are necessarily in conflict. You know, we want to preserve all our natural resources and promote every opportunity to make some money, and you can't necessarily do them, all at once. It's kind of, I mean, you look at it, it's really long, and I don't know that it would be, I don't know if enforceable is the right word, but I never really understood what it does.
Well, the 10-year plan?
Me neither, I never have. First of all, my recollection is that the comprehensive plan is mandated by state law. The state of Maine says that you shall revise it every 10 years.
Right.
And it's to serve, my understanding or impression is, it's to serve as a roadmap for where we do or do not want development to occur.
That's probably very true. In the ideal case, we would use it for that.
Isn't that? how
But
we
that
get
is,
grant
I still maintain that is separate from a land use ordinance.
And I agree.
they are.
I agree that this is not necessarily the place where we're going to be
Worry about the
able to
river.
check off these items.
Then where is that? Where is that
I think it's
place?
going to be in
When
the
we have
zoning,
zoning discussion.
where we get to the zoning.
But if we limit with what we can do with some of these things here, then we're gonna tie our hands to stuff that we can't do when we get to.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily, because if this says, you know, if you're gonna build a hotel, it's gotta have a bathroom for every room. Okay, now, we didn't impact where the hotel is gonna be built, and our hands we didn't tie anybody's hands, we just said, if you're gonna build a hotel, you gotta put a bathroom in every room.
Right, and same with 15. It says if you're gonna develop along the riverfront or along the lake shore, here's how you have to do it. We don't even have any lake shore to worry about, really.
One of the things that I do have a question here on number 15. And I guess it would be the second number 1, which I think should be number 3.
Yeah.
Oh, word processing issue.
Okay. It says, when development contains no forest or insufficient forested portions to include all buildings, the development should be designed to minimize the appearance of building when viewed from existing roads. And the first thing I thought of was, oh gee, I gotta put a wall in front of my house.
No.
They can't see my house from the road. How am I misreading that?
Are we at shoreland, or does this involve
Word
shoreland?
preservation, number 15, preservation of natural beauty and aesthetics. In other words, there was a big grass field where my house is before. And now it's saying that if there's no forest to hide my building, then I have to do something to minimize the appearance from the road. Am I way off track?
Is that your buffer?
Well, that is no, you're not way off track at all. It's just a very broad statement without anybody figuring out how it can be enforced.
I would suggest taking it out. That second sentence in number 3.
We might want to reword it, but I wouldn't take it out, because we are trying to talk about developing things that are not necessarily blatantly visible from the road. And they're saying, if you've got forest land, you're going to do a wooded buffer strip of 50 feet. If you don't have forest land, you got to do what you can to minimize the exposure. Now that may mean planting trees. That may mean building an artificial hill and then planting trees.
Does that mean we want to dictate that to people on how they're going to build their lots for their houses?
No, that means that we as a board can look at the plan and see if they've made their best effort.
Right, but I guess I didn't have to come to the board to build my house.
This isn't about single house development. This is about subdivision development.
But it doesn't say that.
Well, the
Okay,
whole ordinance is.
does it say that up front, at the beginning? General requirements for land use.
Yeah, but everything is aimed at subdivisions. Just like there was the rule about the hydrants. You as an individual lot owner aren't responsible for a hydrant, but you as a
Well, there's
subdivision developer might be.
Let's say, I don't have a hydrant because there's no public water system.
Well, that's a different issue.
But I guess when I saw that, impact on natural beauty.
This is not talking about Joe Blow that owns a house lot.
Well, should it say that somewhere?
I agree with you, Phil. I think it should, because
Yeah.
if it doesn't, then everybody should be under the premise that it would affect everything.
So would this be applicable only,
If you read, go right back to the beginning, general requirement for land use is section 13-700. The following general requirements are applicable to land use activities within the city, to include site design review and subdivisions.
okay, so you're saying, Well, to-
Individual homes
to-
are not subject to site design review.
well, to include,
You don't make an application to the planning board to build one house on one lot.
no, you don't.
No, this is all about applications to the planning board. This whole thing is all about how the board deals with applications that come before the
Which
board.
basically, you're talking commercial development,
Yes,
commercial/industrial development.
commercial meaning, I'm gonna build this great big housing subdevelopment,
Oh, why don't we?
or I'm gonna do an industrial park.
I make a motion.
We passed our 7 o'clock. Okay, well, we'll leave it at that then.
So a lot of, don't worry about the fact that you might have to hide your house.
Well, I've already planted about 300 trees, I'm gonna need a few more thousand.
I'm glad to hear that.
Okay. Go ahead, Todd, what was that motion?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
But wait, too late.